seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby Blog. Happy New Year to you all. We hope we had a fantastic New Year, as fantastic as it could be in the circumstances anyway. Joining me this evening, I've got to work this out again because we're live on camera, and I've got to work out on my. Oh, I'm pointing the wrong way. On my left.
Yeah, that's on. Yeah.
There we go. There he is. It's John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Cammy. Good evening, everybody that's watching.
You have a good New Year, John? Good Christmas break?
Yeah, within reason. It's obviously with the way things are, it's had to be quite a quiet one. But it was nice. The weather's been pretty decent up here since Boxing Day, so we've been able to get out and about.
I got to build a snowman between Christmas and New Year.
Oh, yes.
We got 2 out of a very thin layer of snow in the background. That was glorious. We are, of course, and we're in lockdown 3, I think, officially. I was trying to think, I can't think of any third part of any trilogy that's actually any good.
No, it's a valid point. I mean, there's plenty of arguments for
Rise of the Machines, Terminator. Is it Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines?
Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines.
That was awful. Yeah. Back to the Future 3, definitely the weakest of the 3, although it's a strong trilogy overall.
Alien 3 was pretty rubbish.
What's the other third one? You've got Return of the Jedi. It's the weaker of the 3 original trilogies.
Yeah. Godfather 3.
Oh, I mean, this is the Godfather 3 of.
What?
It is the Jaws. It's even worse. It's the Jaws 3D of lockdowns. That's what we're in. We're having to resort to gimmicks to get through it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so you can get involved. We're live now on YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope, as well as some other places as well. So if you want to get involved in the comments live, we will deal with them. Hello to Andy Lone and Dougie Lowe, who are joining us so far. Andy's asked a question that we're going to address later on about the Six Nations. So we will get on to that. Andy, thank you very much for joining us live. You can also catch this later. You can download it as an audio podcast on Acast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else that you can get your audio podcasts as well. And visit the blog, scottishrugbyblog.co.uk, where you find more details about the podcast and also some wee bits and pieces. John, you've just done a review of the 1872 Cup. Not really be cheerful, but
it was. I think it had inspired me by its desperate nature to try and find some sort of just something to write about. So
some hope.
Yeah, there is none.
We've got Alistair Duncan Donald said Die Hard 3 was a good third installment. Die Hard with a Vengeance it's better than Die Hard 2, not better than Die Hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's an acceptable movie, and like you've said it yourself, it was a good third installment. But I mean, relative to the first Die Hard, it was still rubbish. So
yeah, and it wasn't at Christmas, so they did have to resort to a gimmick. Although this is at Christmas, ironically.
Yeah, so this will be the Christmas movie that we'll
This is
watch.
Die Hard 2. God knows what the lockdown will look like when it's the Die Hard they set in Russia. I can't even remember what that one is called.
Oh,
Live Free and Die Hard's Die Hard 4.0, which is all right in itself. It's a good movie, but it's not a good. It's not Die Hard or Die Hard with a Vengeance.
I think you do have to take Die Hard and other action movies of that ilk with a certain pinch of salt. It's like the Glasgow-Edinburgh rivalry. You just have to take it with a pinch of salt and not take it too seriously.
Yes, that's a good point. We also have a Patreon, which you can find the details scrolling along the bottom of the screen now, which is patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. And for £3 a month, you get in the Richie Vernon Thunderdome. That gets you access to ad-free versions of the audio podcast, a mini podcast where I cut out all the rambling bits where we talk about Die Hard for the first 20 minutes of the podcast.
The best bits.
Just cut straight to the news. So it's normally about half an hour long, kind of little edited version of it. We also do extra exclusive bonus content. So right after this tonight, John and I are going to do a little podcast on the financial status of the SRU. And we've had some questions from our patrons who are members of a super secret social media group. So you get access to that as well. If you pay £5, or you get in the Dougie Donnelly members lounge. If you pay £5, you get your name shouted out on the podcast. We haven't had any £5 members that I'm aware of that have signed up since the last podcast. If anybody has signed up for £5 since the last time we did a podcast, give me a nudge. I'll give you a double extra super shout out next time round. So we've got that this week. Our exclusive content is going to be that. Hopefully, pre-lockdown, we were planning on doing Scotland's hardest ever players. I'm still planning on doing that this month. If we can do it, it just depends on the logistics of and the constrictions of lockdown and finding time to do that. It is still being planned to do that this month.
It's interesting, isn't it, that Scotland's hardest player it's kind of following the current situation out there, in that we are. it's promised forever, but it might not ever happen.
Yeah,
just like our freedom.
I will say, and thank you, Dougie Lowe, has suggested some marvellous examples that we wouldn't have covered had we not delayed. So the delay has led us to uncover some unknown gems in the Scottish Rugby hardest player history. So we're looking forward to covering those a little bit.
Some really, really good suggestions from folks. And you think, you sit here and you say, you kid on, a wee bit about rugby, but it's the more personal stories that you hear coming out from these people. It's unbelievable. So
if you want to contribute to that, you have to be a Patreon, because we asked the patrons who they thought. We've done it ourselves amongst the people that appear, those of us that appear regularly on the podcast. We've gone to the pundits as well, and we've got some pundits choices that hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll get those up on the blog for people to look at. But the final selection will be Patreon-only content, so you'll have to sign up for that. We are also, anyone noticing, we're brought to you in partnership with Manscaped officially now. We are now official Manscaped partners. So we are being paid for that. I have to make that very clear. This is a paid partnership by Manscaped. Now, those who listen to the podcast will know that if you enter the code SRP at manscaped.com, you get 20% off plus free shipping. And what you can get, we've got this. They sent us we got this. This was our initial kind of, in return for the initial sponsorship, we got a wee kit, a wee wash bag, didn't we, John?
Yep, a wee leather bag. It's very, very good quality.
Excuse me. This is, now I have to get the name of this right. This is their, they've got the lawnmower. This is the little pack that you get if you sign up for this. You can buy the bit individually. You get the wee trimmer for your nethers. It's got a lovely wee LED light on. It's quite neat. It's good for the face. I don't use it downstairs. I will say I'm not a trimmer downstairs. That will upset my mum. She gets upset with this section of the podcast. She does listen. She gets upset that we talk about this on the podcast, but I'm not going to stop. We've got this paid partnership till March, mother. You also get Crop Reviver. Now, is it the Crop Reviver? This is refreshing ball toner. John, did you find?
I'm a big fan of the Crop Reviver. I'll be honest.
Not just for downstairs, though, John.
Not just for downstairs. Like for example, this shiny dome up here. Anywhere that has skin that could be sensitive, after perhaps a shaving of your head, or we found that playing drums for 2 hours, if you've got tiny little sore fingers like me, I'm such a little millennial office worker. It's hilarious. Like 2 hours of work and I've got sore fingers. Yeah, no, it's brilliant stuff. Really, really good.
It's like a wee moisturizer, isn't it? Just to kind of keep things nice and fresh. And then you also get this crop preserver ball deodorant. Now,
that's the one I wrote my the Christmas Miracle about, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
An unpublished piece of work.
Yeah, but it apparently stops chafing. Now, obviously, when we've read up on this, chafing is a big issue apparently. Particularly for medical professionals who work long shifts, obviously. So if you are someone that suffers from chafing, apparently that will help. Also, apparently keeping trim downstairs can help. There's no tugging and there's no pulling.
Friction.
Yep, we've been asked to, Manscaped have said it's new year, new you. So maybe it's like we said, it's lockdown 3. You want to try something new. Maybe you live on your own, you don't have a partner. This is the chance to try it. Nobody's going to see you for 3 months, naked, unless you send in unsolicited pictures, and that's not a good idea. I'm not going to advise that.
Yep.
Give it a go, but if you don't like it, it'll grow back.
It will indeed. And
you can also get this, which I have found useful. This is they've got this. It's called the lawnmower. This is a nose hair trimmer, and it is one I will say is quite a comfortable nose hair trimmer. The one I bought previously, I used previously, was a cheap wee thing, and it yank the nose hairs out. But that's quite good. So it's not, you don't have to sign up for the full package. Like I said, manscaped.com. Enter the code SRP, and you'll get 20% off and free shipping for that. You can find details on the blog. New year, new balls. Or new boars, as we should say.
New boars.
New boars. New year, new boars. Hogman. I can't think. I'll think of a Hogman pun later on.
Well, I mean, if anybody's got any rugby puns that they want to throw our way for the next few months of this promotion, then obviously we're all ears. And in saying all ears, we are all freshly trimmed ears.
Yes. One more, yeah.
Very good for that.
Hear you so clearly now, John.
Exactly.
The age that we're at. This is the age we're pitching this podcast up. People that need to trim their ears. Man. We put a poll on the Patreon to say to people, look, do you want us to leave this section into the Patreon podcast? Overwhelmingly, people wanted to hear the smut and the innuendo. So it's staying in. I will timestamp it though for people that don't want to hear and they can skip ahead. Anyway, let's get on with some rugby chat because that's what people will hear you for 50 minutes into a podcast. The bit of news today: Holly Davidson has been announced as referee for Newcastle versus Castres on the 16th of January in the European Cup. That's a fantastic appointment. Great to see. I mean, I think since we were on air, Mike Adamson has also been added to the Six Nations roster as a referee.
He has, yeah. He's got a game in the 2021 edition, assuming all goes swimmingly to plan. But I saw the Holly Davidson news earlier on. I'm very pleased, obviously, and I think there's maybe an argument to be said that we played a small part in that and getting her on the club dinner.
The club dinner. She did a really good speech.
She did, yeah.
For those that don't know about being a referee and how it had been. But I mean,
has there been any examples of referees who've been given? Because as far as I'm aware, she hasn't done a Pro 14 game on her own.
She's run the line, I think, Pro 14. She's definitely on the line, but I don't know if she's done the Pro 14. But I don't know if there's an example of someone that's jumped straight into
a European Cup game or European Challenge Cup, isn't it?
She has done women's. She has done women's internationals.
Yep,
I believe so. She's definitely refereed those, and she's, like I said, she's run the line in the Pro 14. But for anyone that's seen her referee, she is one of the best referees I've seen in terms of the communication, in terms of the decisiveness, the way that she uses the TMO particularly. I think that she uses it as it's a tool to be used rather than someone to listen to.
Yeah.
I think I saw it was one of the finals at the Murrayfield she did one year, and she just straight, the TMO was talking through something. She said, "No, that's fine. I made my decision and on with it." And that's what you want to see in a referee.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be more of a place for that sort of. That seems to be the kind of way referees or people are wanting referees to go. Is there seems to be certain elements of the refereeing community have forgotten that they are actually in charge, and the TMO is, as you say, a tool to be used to review things and not to be. It's not to get every decision absolutely spot on 100%. It's review stuff that's glaring errors.
Yeah, I would say there's also I don't think he's Sam Grove White is the other one to watch. I think he's very good young referees. I think he's kind of done some games where Holly Davidson's run the line and he's been in charge of the match. I think there was an Ulster game I watched a while back, and just the way that they communicated, the way they managed the game was superb. So it's actually quite exciting to see young, good Scottish referees coming through, getting the recognition and getting the game time.
Well, he done the Glasgow Edinburgh game at the weekend.
Yeah, of course.
And he was, I mean, very, very, very decent performance. If you happen to stumble upon my alternative match review, you'll note that I suggest that he might have been very sympathetic towards the west of Scotland fraternity in some of his decisions. So, but I thought he was very good.
Yeah. So it's exciting times for Scottish refereeing. We've not had any for a while, and there's a good young breed. There's also our own. I'm still going to claim it, even though it's been years since he's been on the podcast. We have our own Rory Campbell as well, who is, I think, kind of like sneaking around the fringes, and hopefully, will be up there soon, refereeing in the.
Is this a once a blogger, always a blogger sort of?
I think so. I think once you've appeared on the podcast, you're in, and you're always tainted by association.
Well, I mean, we still use through the blog. We still use the Jamie Lyle connections and all that sort of stuff, don't we?
Yeah, Alan Dimmock still, even though he's the features editor of Rugby World and also contributed to the Scottish Rugby blog and podcast.
Still gets a shout every time.
Yeah. So yes, that's good. A bit of good news, a bit of bad news. Probably if you're on the East Coast of Scotland anyways, that Doohan van der Merwe has signed for Worcester Warriors. Yeah. Now, it's worth kind of discussing this because I think it's a strange one because you can feel two things at the same time with this. You can acknowledge that in the current climate, the SRU don't have the cash to be able to keep someone like Doohan van der Merwe, especially after his performances in the autumn on. We are in uncertain times and we don't know where rugby's headed. So any chance that anybody's got to go and earn a decent living elsewhere, I can't fault them for it, whether Scottish or no. You're not going to criticise them. You can also at the same time think that it feels weird that someone can be qualified for Scotland through residency and suddenly move out of the country. And I don't think there's any cynicism about his move. I'm not questioning his commitment to Scotland. I just think if you're looking at it purely from an optics point of view, it doesn't look good. And I can understand why people therefore I'm not saying that I feel that off he goes, earn his money, I'm happy for him, and I don't question his commitment to Scotland, but I can understand why people who are unhappy with the residency criteria would point to this and say, there's your problem, John.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've touched on many different parts of the argument. I think you're absolutely right. People who maybe don't support residency in the 3-year format, or even suggesting that residency in its entirety is a pointless endeavour, will latch on to this and say, look, here's an example of a guy who's come over, he's a mercenary, he came over to boost his contract value, and first chance he gets, off he goes. It's always going to be more complicated than that, and I think people, maybe this is a 2021 resolution, but trying to understand the human element behind it. Doohan van der Merwe, it's been well publicised that he only came over to Edinburgh because he had a very, very serious injury and was out of contract. That wasn't getting a contract anywhere. He was under the impression his career might even have been over before it even began. So he's acutely aware of how quickly your career can end in rugby. And I have no problem whatsoever with the fact he's come over to Edinburgh and tore the trees up to make space for Mini Murrayfield. It's indicative of what type of person he is, and I think it's really good that he's got the opportunity to go and be rewarded to that. If suggesting that going to Worcester is a reward, I'm sure the financial reward is good, but there's the other part of this that starts to look at. Now, I saw a very interesting debate about this to say that, right, so Doohan van der Merwe came over, gave 3 very good years to Edinburgh, was top try scorer for them each of those years, has played a huge part in their revival over the last couple of years. And then you compare that to perhaps someone like Adam Hastings, a Scots qualified player who, again, was coming from another country, coming up to Scotland from down south. And he's come in and obviously, played his part at Glasgow, but now he's off to Gloucester as well. Is there any difference, really, other than that idea that someone's just been capped? And you could make that argument for any young player coming through who gets capped and then moves to another club. Whether they're Scots born or not, I don't see it as being an issue of residency. It's an issue of timing. And his contract's up, so off he goes.
Yeah, and I think that's the Adam Hastings example is a really good one, because you could say cynically that Adam Hastings used Glasgow in exactly the same way as Doohan van der Merwe used Edinburgh. Adam Hastings' career was flatlining down south. He wasn't getting the game. He got some game time with Bath, wasn't getting loads of game time. Yep. Glasgow from a contract, up he comes, and he gets game time, international experience, and as a result of that, has a better contract offer elsewhere, and off he goes. And it's no different. Back
down to a location that he's lived in the past, where he was. It's no different.
And also, I mean, and this is the other side of this is like Hamish Watson's re-signed a contract today, a long-term contract. Now that's great news for Edinburgh, but just for a moment, and I'm going to upset Edinburgh fans here. I think. I'm worried when a player of Hamish Watson's caliber re-signs for Scotland, and I'll use Adam Hastings is an example. Doohan van der Merwe is an example. Stuart Hogg's an example. Johnny Gray's an example of this. Guys moving to challenge themselves. Guys moving to clubs where they are going to be successful. Now, Hamish Watson, I think, and there was an interview with Finn Russell where he was asked, did you speak to Hamish Watson about the Racing 92 speculation? And he said, yes. So we can assume. And he said, kind of talked around it a wee bit. But it sounds like there was definitely an offer on the table from Racing for Hamish Watson to go over there and play. Now, I can understand, Hamish Watson's kind of, he's 28, 29 now?
Yep, around that.
28, 29. He has been injured in the past, so one side of the argument is he wants to do an Alan Wynne-Jones. He's got a limited career time. He's getting a reasonable wage in Scotland. He can have his game time managed at domestic level and come in and play at international level and be at his best and be at his peak. And I no argument with that at all. I think that's one decision that you could make. There's the other side of it, though, that I think he's 28, 29. You're not, and this is true of Glasgow as well, for people picking me, you're not going to win anything in Scotland domestically. Let's be right at the minute, as things stand, Glasgow and Edinburgh are in no shape to win the Pro 14 within the next couple of years. They're not in any shape to win anything in Europe in the next 5 years, realistically, because you've got both the squads are pretty weak at the minute. We'll come on to that later, no doubt. So at 28, 29, it smacks of a lack of ambition that you're happy to sign a long-term deal to stay with Edinburgh. Yes, it improves your international chances and what you might win a Six Nations with Scotland. And that's me being generous. You may win a Six Nations with Scotland in the next few years with a good win behind you. You're not going to win a World Cup. So that's the best you can hope for. I don't understand why you wouldn't go and try and win a European Championship. We've got Johnny Gray won a European Championship within he played 5 games for Exeter. European Championship this year.
Yeah,
and his gate and all these players have kicked on. The players that moved, Finn Russell has kicked on. Finn Russell's he's a different player, different class to when he left Glasgow. Johnny Gray, even in a few short months, is a different class to when he left Glasgow. Stuart Hogg, different player to when he left Glasgow. Why not do that? That's the thing, and that's why I come back to Doohan van der Merwe. That shows to me, not financial, but that shows ambition. That you want. I know it's Worcester, but it shows ambition to go play in a different competition.
I think there's a lot to be said for that, and you're absolutely right. I think we have had for so many years we had the top players in Scotland were not challenging themselves and not going, or they were, but it wasn't working out. Thinking maybe Chris Patterson going to Gloucester. Players, if we believe that we have this kind of golden generation of players that are world class, we use that term a lot. Do we have world class players? You cannot confirm that you are a world class player by playing 5 games in January and February in the Six Nations and playing for Glasgow or Edinburgh. It just doesn't happen. Sadly, I wish for nothing more than Glasgow getting to semi-finals of European Championships and competing at the top of the league. It's not going to happen anymore for the foreseeable future. So go away and see something. It's something actually. I think it's maybe Gregor Townsend's influence. Actually, he's maybe because obviously he travelled a lot during his career, and I think he does encourage people to try to do that. I agree with you, and I'm probably not as concerned about the Edinburgh letters as you will be. I think it does smack of a lack of ambition, and it's a shame as well because I think by all measures Hamish Watson is a fantastic player, and I get that again the human element. He's got family, he's settled, he's got a settled life here. He will be well looked after here, but there's.
I feel, but it's funny. I'd feel different if it was Jamie Ritchie because I think Jamie Ritchie's a younger player. So within the next, you could see from Jamie Ritchie's point of view, right? I will commit my future to Edinburgh because I can see something. Richard Cockerell's building something here. I can see that if I can manage my game time in the next few years, and let's see where we are in 5 years, I'm going to be 28, 29.
Yeah, or even a 1-year deal for Hamish Watson to say take you up to age 30, and then you go get your payday. You go and challenge yourself abroad and get a payday. Either that or Edinburgh have absolutely thrown the checkbook at him.
Yeah, which is the other option, and it's makes him financially comfortable. And like we said, he has been unlucky with injuries, so he gets managed a bit better. But I just I look at I look at the players that Edinburgh have had, and I look at some players that Glasgow have had, and you look at the players. Grant Gilchrist is an example of someone who, and Ben Toulis is the same. Occasionally play absolute worldies and have got all the potential in the world to be world-class players. Ross Ford, like you say, but are very happy and comfortable to stay with what they know. And I'm not saying there's not an argument for that in the way they're managed and stuff, but I just think if you were driven and had ambition and wanted to win things, you wouldn't stay in Scotland to do that.
Yeah, and it's back to that argument of what are you a professional rugby player to do? Yeah, you make a living out of it, but ultimately you're choosing to be a professional rugby player to try and win things. That's at the heart of what you're doing, I suppose.
And then you've got Andrew Davidson. The other example, Andrew Davidson's left Edinburgh for Gloucester. Now, Andrew Davidson struggled at Glasgow, I think, to get a place, so ended up at Edinburgh. And I'm sure there was a deal. I think from reading things, there was a deal on the table for him to stay at Edinburgh as well. But he's chosen to go to Gloucester to try and prove himself, to try and show that he can. That to me is a positive that he wants to go and do that. As
from reading various sources, the deal that was on the table for Andrew Davidson was insulting, to say the least. So, but yeah, I mean, it's funny because he's a person who's struggled at both pro clubs to get game time. But yeah, every time he's left, so he left Glasgow and everyone was like, oh, I can't believe he's left. That's such a shame. What a talent, what a potential he had. and the same's kind of happened over at Edinburgh. So I think, a move down south is really good for him. Let's see how he goes. Ultimately he was 4th or 5th choice at Edinburgh. Hopefully he'll go down to Gloucester and it'll be the making of him. And then I think probably the point to finish on here is ultimately every player that moves down south or moves to France is opening up a space for someone else to come in and try and take that shirt.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie Batty again. Right, this was after the last podcast has gone down to Bath with immediate effect.
Yeah, yep.
He wasn't getting game time at Edinburgh.
Yep,
and he needs game time to get into and that's the way. Especially in those positions where there isn't the versatility, you are kind of 4th, 5th, end up 4th, 5th in the pecking order. And there was an interview with Jamie Lyle on Rugby Pass where Jamie Batty said, again, this comes back to how players are coached and managed in Scotland. That in that interview, he's saying he's constantly being asked to drop pounds and he's making himself ill doing it.
Yep.
Now, if that's not his natural way, if that's not the way he plays or the way that he needs to be, then I'm not sure that that's the best way to coach a player. If he's, saying, look, I'm as slim as I'm going to be. I've dropped everything I can. I'm spending all my time in the sauna. I'm making myself ill as a result.
Yep.
He shouldn't then be pushed to do that.
No, especially when you look at rugby's, and this is back to our previous chat about kind of what is a rugby player's body. And ultimately, you look at a loose head comes in many shapes and sizes. You've got your Ollie Kebble style loose heads, who is, seeing him packed down at tight head was not a surprise because he is massive. And he gets through a power of work, but he is a big, big lad. And then you've got maybe smaller, like the most beautiful prop in the world, Alan Dell, who's on the other scale, so there's, I mean, you just got to find what works.
Yeah, I mean, Gavin Brock has asked a question here. I think he's talking in relation to Hamish Watson. Should there be a risk by leaving Edinburgh he could lose his place for Scotland? Could that have come into his thoughts? Now, I think you look at what happened to Alan Dell, and there's an argument for that because he did lose his place for Scotland. He's way down the pecking order now. Hamish Watson's different, though. I think Hamish Watson is widely regarded outside of Scotland as being a world-class open side. And so I don't think that was ever a risk for him that he would lose his place. There's
no cups with Alan Dell on them.
No.
In Murrayfield. Hamish Watson's one of their more marketable guys. He's not going to lose his place going abroad. It's that idea of we're surprised that he hasn't because we know he could and he would have been fine. And that's ultimately because again, you talk about Hogg, Russell, Johnny Gray, guys like even Richie Gray when he left Glasgow. You're still looking at these guys going, these are world class players. These are our best players. They're going to be in the Scotland team. Yeah.
The other news that's happened since we were off the air is now, if I'd been able to do a theme tune, I would have played the Rainbow theme tune for this. Up above the streets and houses, Pro 14 flying high.
Oh, yes.
It's the Rainbow Cup. So, apparently, and this is like a lot has happened since this was announced, the format for the 2020-21 Guinness Pro 14 season was confirmed, and an end-of-season cup competition, the Rainbow Cup, will take place to introduce the Vodacom Bulls, Emirates Lions, Cell C Sharks, and DHL Stormers from South Africa, following the withdrawal from Super Rugby. So basically, the four big South African teams have withdrawn from Super Rugby officially. The Cheetahs and the Kings have gone from the Pro 14, and they've been replaced by basically the top four teams in South Africa. So there's this Rainbow Cup that's apparently going to take place in June. And fans will be able to watch it on Premier Sports. And they're going to play like a mini cup.
Yeah.
Prior to, I mean, it'd be prior to the Lions tour. And again, we'll come on to that later, whether that's happening. But like a wee kind of Mooj Bush, as opposed to like the Pro 16.
Yeah, it's definitely got a better ring to it, hasn't it, than the Pro whatever it's going to become. Just for clarity's sake, because I know a lot of people were confused about this, the Rainbow Cup is not a Mario Kart Cup.
No, however, it's not the one where you can fall off the sides of the track.
No, however, it is a cup in Mario Tennis and Mario Power Tennis. and it is the first of the Star Cup tournaments in those 2 games. So if you were thinking Mario, you were right. Wrong game though. So yeah. I mean, I think it's a really the way they done it was interesting, and I think it's always good to. It's a really badly kept secret that they were the 4 South African teams were coming in, so it's a good way to introduce it. Whether it happens or not, let's keep our sceptical pants on for that one. But yeah, I mean, if it goes ahead, from a Glasgow perspective just now, I'd be absolutely terrified to see us take on top class South African opposition. Yeah, I think we might take another dose of the COVID at that point and take a 28-0 and be happy with that. But yeah, it was always going to happen. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
see how
the Kings and the Cheetahs coming into the Pro 12 to make it the Pro 14 was always a bit like an advanced kind of party, having a bit of a feel and a check.
Yeah, can it actually work?
Can it work? Is it workable? But yes, the travelling's hard, but the time difference is fine.
Yes,
I think as now we've got the 4 teams in, I think the one thing that's going to be interesting is how the altitude works.
Yeah,
because that's something that it takes time to adjust to. I mean, I think there's an argument that one of the best ways to do it is just to go and get it over, go and play the rugby at altitude and then come away again. So
yeah,
potentially that could work, but
go and get it done.
From a marketing point of view, I think it's not, the Pro 16 as it will then be the main rugby attraction within South Africa. So that's going to be very different to the Kings and the Cheetahs playing and it being the sideshow almost.
Yeah, kind of in competition with Super Rugby still.
Yeah.
No, it'll be interesting. I think there's been plenty of talk about, obviously, the TV money that the Cheetahs and the Kings brought to the table when they joined the Pro 14, and it's not going to be any different when the 4 sides join. There is a lot of interest in rugby in South Africa for obvious reasons, and there's broadcasters that will put money into it. So it's not a bad outcome for the Pro, whatever we are. Pro
23 or whatever we end up being once the time we get the USA involved as well.
14 groups of 3 teams that then play each other on an odd Saturday every 12 to 16 weeks.
Until Leinster win it.
Until Wednesday, yeah. And then, doesn't matter what format it's. Although, I mean, as Graham Love points out that Leinster have not won a game all year. So
well, there's that, isn't there? Of course, we live in hope. In hope. So it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I think that it'd be interesting to see what crowds they now get at these games because even prior to COVID, there was like one man and his dog watching the Cheetahs and the Kings matches in the Pro 14. But I think those other 4 teams, the Bulls and stuff, get good crowds at games. So
it's a shame as well because the Cheetahs mascot was absolutely cool as beans.
Yeah, and the other side of it is you're going to get big name South African players coming and playing. Those that aren't playing for Sale.
Well, yes, Sale and Gloucester and Edinburgh.
France, and in France. But yeah, we'll get some big name players coming over, so there's that draw as well. So yes, that will be that one to watch. Should we talk about Edinburgh and Glasgow in 1872 now, John?
Let's briefly talk about it. I think everything that needs to be said has been written down by
I think
myself.
my main summary was I put this on our super secret social media page that I don't think you could describe it as a game of rugby under the Trade Descriptions Act.
I was so tempted to steal that line for the article. It was so good. Yeah, it was. I mean, I get where people are coming from. That in some ways it was almost like it was, to me, it was similar in a way to the first half at Twickenham when we were getting absolutely pulverised by England. There was almost an element of kind of masochism that I didn't want to look away just in case, because I wanted to see how bad it could get. And like by the time we got to like the 64th minute on Saturday, it was like there was a real possibility of a 0-0. This is peak Scottish rugby right here. Nobody is going to win this. We're both going to lose. This is unbelievable. It was.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't able to watch it live. I watched it back since. I wasn't able to, for my sins, I watched it back since. But I wasn't able to watch it live, so I was following on Twitter, and there's a tweet that the Offside Line put out, which said something like, Glasgow kick it out on the full, and so Edinburgh have a 22 dropout, and they kick it out on the full. And I was like, that is Scottish rugby, pro rugby right now in a nutshell.
It was just after. It was Brandon Thompson right in front of the post.
That's it. Misses it.
Then Edinburgh kicked out of the full.
And I think the problem is where we are in the sea, and this is the worry, and it comes back to the lack of ambition. We're talking about Hamish Watson and a mentality point of view that I think, rightly or wrongly, Edinburgh and Glasgow seasons are over this year. It's a weird season. It's a development season for everybody, really. Although whether or not they're using it as a development season, I don't think they are, and they should, but they possibly should be. And we'll probably talk about that in a second. But there's an element of complacency. It's, we're playing against each other. These are our mates. We turn up to every international, and they make this fake. It's the 1872 Cup. It's the biggest rivalry in rugby. It's not. I mean, the first time they played a game was 2007, so it's been like 13 years or something like that. It's not. It's not some game that's been played for ages. It's a Reds v Blues international tryout prior to the Six Nations, effectively. And I think, unfortunately, that's how the players, whether or not I don't think they deliberately go out to treat it like that, but I think there is that mentality of, we'll just go out and we'll have a throw about and we'll hit each other, and I'm trying to cement my side in the Six Nations. And as a result, you get this sloppy, unclinical play of people throwing daft passes and balls being spilt forward. There was an opportunity there for one of the sides to play really clinical, just stick up the jumper rugby and absolutely take the other side to town. But it's just mistake after mistake for both sides, and at that level, there's no excuse for it.
No, I think that's absolutely fair. I described it as on Twitter as being Scotland's supposed best players doing an impression of Scotland's worst players, and I was being slightly harsh on it, but it was really, really poor stuff. And for me, the issue wasn't necessarily the basic skills were lacking a lot of the time, and that's obviously an issue. But there was two elements that kind of struck me. One, the conditions were perfect. It was a lovely day to go out and just play a wee bit of rugby. And as you say, both seasons are absolutely and utterly done, right? When they announced the Rainbow Cup, they announced the change to the playoff system in the Pro, as it'll be the Pro 12 up to that point. They've announced the playoff system's changed. So there's no chance, certainly from a Glasgow perspective, there's very little chance we're going to make it, and Edinburgh are much the same. So there is an opportunity to start going out, entertain, give people at home a reason to miss being at Murrayfield on a freezing cold January afternoon. Give them a reason to remember, thinking, oh, I really like this rugby lark. Instead, we go down the route of let's have one-up runners, hitting into a man twice, and then kicking it. Repeat, rinse. The most exciting thing was a horrendous pass that got hacked on by Magnus Bradbury, and then he nearly fluffed his lines whilst over the line. It was, dreadful. But the other element that probably kind of stands out, and I think this is a real concern, not obviously being flippant about, international hitouts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It really is concerning the decision making that was taking place. Edinburgh could have been miles ahead, and there was obviously decisions getting taken on the park not to take the points, but to try and crush the Glasgow pack, which they were doing quite regularly, but they still were sitting at 64 minutes at 0-0. Yeah. It was really bad decision making.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the Glasgow team and your bit, you were saying, they don't look in great condition. No. And I know they've come off the back of their enforced isolation after being exposed to Exeter's shenanigans with the coronavirus and half the squad coming down with it. But
Exeter virus, as it's known now.
The but but not to be in as bad a condition as they are in, and also I think the issue of fly half at Glasgow as well. Now, I don't want to kind of slag off Brandon Thompson. He's had a really run of. He's been put in a very difficult position because he is, I think, has shown over the last few seasons that he's not capable of playing 10 at pro level. And that's, and he's under contract to Glasgow, and that's fine. I think he's obviously a very competent fly half, and that's absolutely fine. He obviously showed a lot of promise because I know he got a cap at under 20 for South Africa, which is why, when everyone got excited about the South African fly half coming through, they were like, oh no, he's actually tied to South Africa because he played in an under 20 game. He's obviously got the ability, but there's for some reason he doesn't. He lacks something that allows him to play at that level, and he's put in a very difficult position where he's been asked to play there every week by Glasgow when he's not capable of doing so. And rather than change it up and bring in a young player and say, right, there's your chance. Adam Hastings is out injured. Pete Horn is not an option at 10. Let's blood somebody for the rest of the season. It's inexplicable that you would keep going with a guy that's missing kicks in front of the posts.
The point I made on our group chat, our sort of private chat we have, in any other line of work, it comes down to the manager. If the person they've asked to do a task, right? So they've asked Brandon Thompson to do a task. They've asked him to do a job at 10. He is clearly not confident. You do not need any sort of qualifications to look at that guy and look at the performances in the last couple of weeks. Look at the performance in the last couple of years. I criticised Brandon Thompson about 2 years ago, saying he had the worst game of rugby I have ever seen in my life. He has now managed to do a hold my beer moment and usurp that, but that was 2 years ago. And the fact that Danny Wilson is sending him out there, basically a lamb to the slaughter. He's sending him out there with no confidence. Every time something goes wrong on the park, you look at a guy like Finn Russell, something goes wrong. He knows he's got the confidence to go, you know what, it's fine, I'll get the next one. But he's also got a whole lot of money in the bank with regards to that. And I don't mean his salary at Racing, I mean his past performances. Brandon Thompson doesn't have that. So every time something goes wrong now, fans are on top of him. Everyone's on top of him. And this is what I was talking about with you, Cammy. 2021, I am not blaming Brandon Thompson for that in the slightest. He should never have been on that park. He's not confident. He's actually, you could go as far as to say he is actually not fit for work just now, in that his confidence is completely shot. He shouldn't be out there.
Yeah, and I think there was an interesting thing this week I was reading with, and this is we come back to this again and again with Scottish rugby, that there was a thing on Radio 4 this week. They were talking to the English cricket team out in Sri Lanka. They've got a psychologist, a clinical psychologist with them for that tour.
Yep.
To with them, because they acknowledge that, being away from family, they're away for 3 months from their families and stuff to look after them. Now, it has been singular. This is something that's lacking in Scottish rugby, and I think it's Scottish rugby's biggest weakness, and it's yet to be addressed, is getting one having somebody on the staff that does this full time and works with the players from a mental point of view and gets them, helps them, and that needs to happen, I think, because there've been so many players who talked about the mental health issues they've had, and in Scotland it is so difficult because you don't get the game time, and you are constantly unless you're one of the top players, you're not going to get the game time. You're always going to be on the fringes. And some players who've come out, after the Dave Rennie era, have come out and said, I'm absolutely fine with my place in the squad. I thought the way Dave handled it was fine. And you've had other players say, I was constantly promised game time. I never got it. I was constantly disappointed. I felt constantly undermined. I felt like I was never getting anywhere, and my mental health suffered as a result. I think demonstrates a need for that. Fine. The guys that are like, no, it was fine for me. That's brilliant. That was great for you. But not everybody deals with that in the same way, which is why you need a clinical psychologist, not working with both, not two for each team, but just somebody working across Scottish rugby that can say, that guy's struggling. And let's get in, because there's also the kind of the machismo kind of side of it, that and there's a good podcast. If anyone, Damian Hughes, who is the current, or was, I think, up to the current kind of, he's an occupational psychologist, I think is the correct title for him. He works with Gregor Townsend at an international level. It's a podcast he does with Jake Humphreys, where they talk to people in sport about the mental health and about what it takes to put in winning performance. And they spoke to Sia Khaleesi. One of his things was like, how do you be vulnerable as a man? And to talk, this is a World Cup winning captain talking about this stuff. You look at the top players and the top teams in rugby right now, the All Blacks and South Africa, they are buying into this wholesale. They are talking about being vulnerable. They're talking about psychological safety. Sticking Brandon Thompson out, who's missing kicks in front of the thing is not. Where's the psychological safety in that? Where is allowing someone to be vulnerable? Where is the support there? No. And it's not. And this is why. That's the difference, I think, between Scotland and the best teams in the world. It's not necessarily. Yes, we don't have the quality of players across the board. We have parity in some areas. The difference is purely psychological. And until you have someone working full time in Scottish rugby dealing with that, we are not going to win anything.
100%.
And that's where we are with it. And you look at and that game in a nutshell is where is the clinicalness in that game at the 1872 from either side?
Yep.
You've got two teams either afraid to win, afraid to play the ball, or absolutely having brain farts all over the place because they're just chucking it about because they haven't got the focus.
No, I think that's absolutely right, and that kind of summarises very well where we're at. And we've been talking about this for years now, and we'll keep talking. Maybe someday someone.
Well, I think they've officially adopted pinball in the
That's true.
On the official rugby account. Maybe if we keep talking about employing a psychologist full time enough, they'll do that as well.
They do have to listen to us after all, so
contractually obliged to check we don't say them too bad. Yeah. Anything else on Edinburgh, Glasgow that you want to touch on? Or
no, just rubbish game of rugby. I hate box kicks, and I'm glad Glasgow didn't win it in the end because I think it would have covered a lot of the sins of what was an absolutely honking performance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll do it all again Friday night. In the meantime. Yes, it's Hands in the Ruck time. It's our Any Other Business section of the podcast where we talk about things that have pleased us, displeased us, annoyed us, things that have had their hands in our ruck this week. So it can be beyond Scottish rugby. It can be beyond rugby even in some cases. We don't care. It's just a chance to cover some of the wider issues. There's a coup going on in America, John, as we're online.
There is, yeah, as we speak, there is actually a coup going on. Yeah,
and that's not a cow. That is not.
No, it is not a healing coup. It is an actual coup. Which
is, yeah. Well, I'll have to catch up on that later. I was just thinking, why is my group chat mad? And I was like, oh,
yeah.
I'll check that during the jingle.
Actually, bonkers.
So anyway, so that's happening as we speak. It's got that. It's Hands in America's ruck.
Yes.
We've had one contribution this week. I had put the shout out late because it was quite a late call whether we were actually doing this or not because of lockdown issues. But Border Badger got in touch, long time listener, regular contributor to Hands in the Ruck, said the BBC, his Hands in the Ruck is the BBC saying Curry and Underhill are shoo-ins for the Lions despite Mish's stats being off the charts. That's annoyed me, I think. I think it's the same thing with any Lions selections. You get annoyed at them because they only comment on the games that they watch, and the games that they watch, unless you've got Edinburgh and Glasgow in Europe, are the Premiership games and a bit of players in France,
and maybe the odd Leinster game. Then
Finn Russell's highlights reel. That's all anybody watches during the Lions picks.
That's it. Yeah, I know it'll be the starting Lions 10 based on his highlights reel. To be fair, but yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. You're asking. English-based journalists to pick a side based on what they know about rugby, and what they know about rugby is English-based. So it's always going to end up with, and don't get me wrong, I think Curry and Underhill are both very decent players. Yeah. But I think Hamish Watson will be in, for every time we've criticised Warren Gatland on here, he has never shown a bias towards English players. So
no, and I think that's we're getting the Lions chat without doing the jingles, but we'll do this week. I had an interaction with somebody on Twitter this week who was kind of having a pop at Mark Palmer from the Times.
Yeah.
About, Mark had picked his Lions team, and he had a fair smattering of Scots. But he made the very reasonable point that it's all very speculative at the moment because we haven't played the Six Nations yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to get onto the Lions, where the Lions 2 is even going ahead in a minute anyway. But I don't think if you were picking a Lions team right now, yes, you would want more. You arguably you'd have more Scots than Welsh players in, because Wales had a poor autumn and Scotland had a slightly better one, albeit we had a poor end to it. And a player, for example, Jamie Ritchie, I think probably played his way out of Lions contention. If you're picking it now, by the end of it, I think you going into this though, it depends what kind of Six Nations Scotland have ultimately as to how many players we get. If we lose all our games, then you can't expect them to have a big representation. If we play badly away to England and France, I wouldn't expect a large representation. If Wales play reasonably well, then fair play. I think that's what it always comes down to, the Six Nations beforehand.
Yeah, I think people always talk about that Six Nations as being key. So it really is in this case, because obviously we've had that break in rugby last year. So I think it's absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing is that, really looking back at the last two Lions too, can we honestly say that the people that didn't go from Scotland 100% deserve to go above who went in the end? Now, the only two people I can think of are last time round, so 2017, Hamish Watson over James Haskell and Finn Russell over Dan Biggar. Yep. Now, the Russell Biggar thing, I think, is debatable. I think probably 50-50 call, given where Russell was at the time. Watson Haskell, people have made the point to me since that Haskell brings something to the camp that Hamish Watson can't do, and that's the social side of things, and that's driving people on in training and being vocal and being James Haskell. And whether you like that or not, it's something extra.
Yeah.
And Hamish Watson was never going to get near the test squad, let's be fair, in 2017.
Even with the party up top that he's going with, he's not the most sociable of characters. So, you can understand that. But yeah, I mean, I think now, this time round, there is going to be some tighter calls. And, let's see how the Six Nations goes. If we lose it, then,
And let's get a Scottish coach in the room. We haven't had a Scottish coach in the room for the last 2 years. One of the last time around, that was our fault, because Gregor Townsend declined to go.
He did, yeah. And you can understand his logic. He just started his job. This time round, he's been in post for quite some time and will continue to be in post for quite some time, as he's obviously got his contract extension through to the World Cup in 2023.
Yep. So, as Gavin Brocky saying, the BBC vote had Finn for 10 at the Lions. Now, again, I was asked, do you think Finn, should Finn Russell be the 10th at the Lions? I don't honestly know at this stage, because I don't know who else. He's the form 10 at the minute, but you don't. If you look at historic Lions tours, you don't necessarily pick the form player. You pick the player that plays the game plan you want them to play. Yeah. And right now, that could be Owen Farrell for all we know, in Warren Gatland's thinking at 10.
Well, exactly, yeah.
So it's all speculation. As is whether this is my hands in the rock. As is whether the Lions actually goes ahead, because of coronavirus. Now, there was an article by Rob Kitson in The Guardian that was saying everybody in World Rugby should bend over backwards to make sure the Lions happens, whether that's in the autumn or whether that's in the summer of 2022. What absolute rubbish!
Yep.
Right, the Lions, and I'm all for the romanticism of the Lions. And I know as Scottish people that's been eroded away after years of us being utter pish and and not getting selected for the Lions, and justifiably so in many cases.
Yep.
But yeah, my love for the Lions is gone. I followed it in '97, but then after that, after years of not having anybody on the tour, you do start to lose interest. A whole generation of Scots lost interest in the Lions years ago. But even putting that to one side, and the romanticism and the history that are on the Lions, you need pragmatism. Look, we're coming off the back of coronavirus. If you can get the Lions tour played this summer, play it. By all means, play it. Right? It's scheduled in. If it needs to happen in the UK, let it happen in the UK, because that's the safe way to do it for coronavirus. If it can happen in South Africa and you can get everybody over there and play in closed stadiums, by all means, do that as well. If you get the broadcast money to justify it. Let's just get it out of the way this summer, one way or another. By the way, South Africa have failed to sign up in time to get vaccines in place. So it's not looking good for a summer tour to South Africa for a number of reasons. But yeah, and postponing it till the autumn, well, that just buggers up everything else. But we need to get games played in the autumn for the financial survival of the Northern Hemisphere rugby.
Exactly. Yeah,
I mean, the only next summer.
The only justification you can have for, well, to your point, I think the justification is that if you can swap the venue with a view to making money with the Lions tour going ahead, broadcast rights, etc., and then distributing that amongst the home nations, then that's of value. But
then the question needs to be, is the money you make on the Lions tour the equivalent of four nations hosting their own tests in the autumn, or and also you've got to think it's also unfair on the the Southern Hemisphere teams who aren't part of the tour. So you play it summer 2022. Well, New Zealand lose out on the touring teams. Australia lose out on the touring teams. South Africa make all the money.
It's not fair.
It's not fair. So it gets played this summer, or it doesn't happen. And to hang with the romanticism of it all.
I know, yeah. It's the romanticism's utter nonsense.
What's at its hands in your ruck, John?
So I've got a real positive hands.
Yay!
Starting off as we mean to go on, it will not last. This young gentleman has made his way into the hands in the ruck quite a few times for me, in both positives and negatives. But Mr. Hugh Jones, shining beacon. What a beautiful man he is, for a start, just to get that out of the way again. What a shining beacon he was in an otherwise ridiculous, rubbish Saturday afternoon. He continues to the Hunaissance, will we call it?
Why not? I like that. The Hunaissance.
Hunaissance. Let's go with it. That was just off the top of my head. Yes, you can thank me later. Yeah, he looked so confident, and people are saying, obviously, international call-up, getting back into the squad, played a wee bit of 13 as well. It was lovely to see, and yeah, I'm just delighted that he is back, feeling confident in himself, just in time to probably go and sign a contract elsewhere.
But at least that shows ambition, John.
Exactly, that's what we like.
And actually, from an ambition point of view, let's look at what he's done. He's seen that in order to get back in the Scotland team, he needs versatility, because he has to unseat Chris Harris. Chris Harris is in the squad because Chris Harris can cover the back three and play centre. Hugh Jones needs to get in. If he wants to, he understands he's going to get on the bench, and there's no way Gregor Townsend is picking someone that can only play 13 on the bench.
Correct.
He wants someone that can cover different positions. What a fantastic career choice to do that, to go and put yourself in that position at that. Again, Hugh Jones is a young player, but old to be switching, make such a kind of, I suppose, the only other person I can think of, Richie Vernon, is the only one who's made such sudden career switch. Of significant, of such significance. But yeah.
It's a brave move, and particularly as he's switching to a position where the Scotland captain plays. So he knows that he's not moving. It's not an easy choice. It's not saying, you know what, I'm going to go and play 10 now because we don't have any 10s. He's moving to a position where internationally he's always going to be second fiddle to Stuart Hogg, or and you could argue maybe Blair Kinghorn. People would argue him. Probably people from the wrong side of Scotland would argue about him.
I knew that was coming.
I know I tee it up. Yeah, but they would be wrong, of course, because Hugh Jones has been playing much better.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy choice he's made. It's as you say, it's an ambitious choice, and his market value now, has proven he can cover the back three. He's obviously a 13 by trade. He's played 12 in South Africa. So you're now starting to, versatility is so prized, and there'll be a big contract offer somewhere waiting for him.
Yeah,
Probably not in Glasgow.
No, but that's not. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing for Scotland. It's not necessarily a great thing for Glasgow. And this is something that we are going to touch on in our Patreon special, where we're going to look at the finances of Scottish rugby and where they stand. So if you want to listen to that, then you'll need to sign up for our Patreon. Go to scottishrugbyblog.co.uk patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast.
Yep.
You can go to scottishrugbyblog.co.uk and there'll be details there as well. We will put that out there. There's other things on there. You can get the history of sevens we did with Blood and Mud podcast, and Professor Tony Collins is worth a listen. There's some stuff. We did a Christmas special quiz. It was good fun.
Yeah, I've still not got over that. I was a wee bit upset about that. After
Spoilers, John. Spoilers.
No, I mean, everybody's going to assume that I didn't win anyway. But
you can play along online. Of course, the quiz is available online. But the quiz itself you can play online along with it or with your friends at home. You can also find that we also did a bit with Alan McDonald, friend of the podcast. We did a bit on concussion as well, which was very enlightening. If you wanted to listen to that, that's what we've got to just over the hour mark, John. Remarkably. Woo! And there was rugby to talk about as well. And we talked mostly about rugby. So 45 minutes of rugby, 15 minutes of Die Hard and manscaping. The ratio was a fine.
What more could you ask for?
So that's it for this week from the podcast. We'll be back next week I'll look back at the 1872, catch up some other bits and bobs and news, starting to get excited about the Six Nations if it happens. And again, we're going to talk about that in our Patreon special in a moment anyway. But for the moment, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from John.
Goodbye, folks.